Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and if you're going to bed, good night. This is Roger Ferguson coming to you with the Talk Crypto podcast, and I believe this is episode 3. In today's video or in today's show, I'd like to talk to you about the very important subject of know thyself. Now, bear with me. It's not intended to be philosophical whatsoever. But I think when we're getting into a space like the digital asset space or the cryptocurrency space, it's very important to take stock of, like, for example, who I am and how do I react to certain situations when they present themselves. And the point I'm trying to make is if you are relatively new to the crypto asset space or the cryptocurrency space, then you'll soon come to discover that it has quite a lot of volatility. And by that I mean the price fluctuates, in high degree of percentages both up and down. And I think it's very important to apply the principle of knowing who you are and how you will react to these situations, which quite honestly, they do occur quite frequently. So I know you're probably thinking, hang on, this is the Talk Crypto podcast. What has that got to do with anything in relation to cryptocurrency? And from my personal experience, I can tell you that it has everything to do with your emotions, to do with understanding who you are as a person and how you react. So hopefully I've set a foundation for us to get into this subject. I promise you, stick with this and we will get into much meatier content. We will jump into charts, or rather I will jump into charts. I will share technical analysis. I will share fundamental analysis. I will share, the sentiment analysis. But before we go to these, to the next stage, I think it's important to take stock of, oneself, because if you just jump in to the meatier content, to the price, and you don't have a firm understanding of the very important emotional intelligence and knowing who you are, then you may react emotionally in a situation. And knowing this in advance will hopefully help you to deal with these situations when they are presented. I hope that makes sense, and I hope I'm not laboring the point. So let's go ahead and share my screen, and we'll start with Know Thyself. Again, Wikipedia is not an academic journal, so forgive me for using it, but hopefully it brings to light the point I'm trying to make. So the ancient Greek aphorism, I kept trying to pronounce that word, but the ancient Greek aphorism, know thyself, essentially means, let's have a look here. Well, it essentially means, according to Wikipedia's definition, nothing to excess and surety brings ruin. Know thyself had a variety of meanings attributed to it in literature, and over time, as in early ancient Greek, the phrase meant to know your measure. I'm just scrolling down. If you are watching this on YouTube, you can follow along. And if you're listening to this in one of the podcast platforms, then hopefully you're following along as well. So I just want to bring into light what Benjamin Franklin in 1750, what his view on Know Thyself was. And in basically, there are three things. This is like in 1750 from Benjamin Franklin in his Poor Richard Almanac. he observed the great difficulty of knowing oneself with, essentially, there are three things. Things that are extremely hard, such as steel, a diamond, and to know oneself. So these are perceived to be hard things, and by Benjamin Franklin. What else can I share with you without hammering the point? So, okay, this may be interesting for any movie buffs, film buffs. The movie Matrix, the Wachowskis, forgive the pronunciation, brothers, had inscribed over the oracle's door in the movie. I think it was a Latin word that said temit nosi. I'm probably mispronouncing it, so forgive me. And last of all, just with making this point in Know Thyself, some of you may be familiar with a classic piece of literature, a book called The Art of War. And it essentially, in accordance to that book, The Art of War, to know thyself means to know others and to know thyself, and you will not be endangered by innumerable battles. So in the saying by Sun Tzu, the idea of knowing oneself is paramount. I think I've spent enough time on Know Thyself. I'm moving on to the next page, and there is a fantastic book that I have a copy of. I'm actually looking at it right now as I'm speaking to you in the library, and it's a book by Ray Dalio, and it's called Principles, Life and Work. And Ray Dalio has a very interesting website, and if you're on screen you can see it. It's called principlesu.com. Hopefully that helps you if you're listening to it on the podcast platform. And basically what you can do is you can take a journey and do a free assessment as to who you are, right? And you get to understand your strengths, your weaknesses, and so on and so forth. And so allow me to share my analysis. I'll bring that down here. I'm just moving my picture if you're on YouTube watching. So I actually took this assessment by Ray Dalio, and it's a very, very revealing. So I'm happy to share that with you. So my results were organized in multiple sections, which was an archetype, how I think, how I engage with others, and how I apply myself. So my results were, I'm most like a growth seeker, a shaper, and a coach, right? And I don't want to sort of go into too much of detail, but hopefully you get the point of the importance of taking stock and getting to know yourself, and just knowing who you truly are by doing some psychometric testing. It'll help you to deal with a myriad of situations when they do occur. So now that I've shared with you, so again, that website is principlesu.com. That's principlesyou.com. I hope you enjoy that. The next subject I want to talk about, all-encompassing Know Thyself, is emotional intelligence. There was a book I read, and I still believe I have it in my library, and the book is called Emotional Intelligence, and the author is Daniel Goleman, Goleman, Goleman. And so just looking at what is emotional intelligence, and it reads, drawing from several different sources, a simplified definition of emotional intelligence describes an ability to monitor your own emotions as well as the emotions of others, to distinguish between and label different emotions correctly, and to use emotional information to guide your thinking and behavior and influence that of others. Now, why is that important? You see, I made a point earlier that the cryptocurrency market is I'll use the word incredibly, because it in my opinion, it is incredibly volatile for the moment. This may change over time, but for the moment, the price swings are quite large to the upside and conversely to the downside. And therefore, having a certain amount of emotional intelligence and how you deal with these price swings, in my opinion, will help anybody. So again, uh, emotional intelligence versus IQ. It says emotional intelligence is all about identifying emotions in ourselves and others, relating to others, and communicating about our feelings. Uh, IQ, on the other hand, is cognitive intelligence. This is the intelligence that people are generally most familiar with, as it is the type that is most often referred to when the word intelligence is used. It is also the type that is most often measured through testing and estimated through things like grade, point, average. So our intelligence, right, is used in when we set examinations, etc., etc. So hopefully there's a distinction between cognitive intelligence and emotional intelligence, and how emotional intelligence is perhaps not talked about enough. And by extension, I think knowing about emotional intelligence will put you in good stead to deal with situations that are highly emotionally charged. And so I'm going to move on now. Now, along this know thyself train, where we've moved from knowing thyself, looking at Ray Dalio's principles and his psychometric testing. It's absolutely free, by the way. And then we looked at Daniel Goleman's emotional intelligence book. And now we've arrived at a really classic piece of literature. And it's a book that, if I'm not mistaken, I'm reading it here. It was written in 1926. And the book's name is The Richest Man in Babylon. And the author was George S. Clason, Clason. I believe if you go to YouTube and you type in The Richest Man in Babylon audiobook, you can actually have a listen to it. And it's worth actually owning a copy of this. I make this recommendation to, anybody that I love and care about, and I tell them, look, it's important you come to understand these teachings. This was written way back, perhaps in the 1926, and it's almost 100 years old. But the nuggets, the gold nuggets in terms of the knowledge is still very relevant in 2021. So just giving you a little abstract of the book, the 7 cures, it talks about the cures for a lean purse. So it's written in very old English, but listening to it, it's like storytelling. And I think you're going to enjoy it very much. So do look out for it on YouTube, like I referenced earlier. So the first cure is start thy purse to fattening. So in the book, there's a character called Arkad, Arkad, and he advises on saving 10% of your annual income to start building up your wealth or your purse. And it says, for every 10 coins thou placest within thy purse, take out for use but 9. Thy purse will start to fatten at once, and its increasing weight will feel good in thy hand and bring satisfaction to thy soul. What does that mean? Essentially, for every $10, pounds, rupees, rubles, whatever currency that you have, for every 10 that you earn, one should consider taking out, 10%. In the case of every 10, you take out 1. Now, let me say this. Nothing I'm saying here should be construed as financial advice. This is just my opinion. I am not a financial advisor, and listening to me will not necessarily increase your financial standing, because I'm a nobody. I'm just this guy on YouTube who's sharing information that I've come across, and I'm hoping that it may have some impact on your life. But what I'm trying to say is, and it's essentially a disclaimer, is that I'm not a financial advisor. This is just for education and entertainment purposes only. Good. The second cure, control thy expenditure. So Arcad advises against luxury expenditures that ultimately become confused as necessities. The gold we may retain from our earnings is but the start, and what each of us calls our necessary expenses will always grow to equal our incomes unless we protest to the contrary. And confuse not the necessary expenses with thy desires. Hopefully that makes sense. Make a distinction between what you need, right, which is a need, and what you want. The third cure, make thy gold multiply. Arcad advises to invest and to compound the investment return from these savings. The earnings it will make shall build our fortunes. Learn to make your treasure work for you. Make it your slave. Make its children and its children's children work for you. Compounding, I think perhaps it's been misrepresented or even misquoted, but there is a lot of, I've come across a lot of writings that suggest that Albert Einstein, his thought processes is that compound interest is the eighth wonder of the world. It has been challenged to suggest that somebody else wrote it, but that's not the point. The point is compound interest. And I'm going to share a very quick story with you. I think I might have been about 27 years old, and I traveled with my then fiance, my now wife, and we went to Australia. And I met this man who appeared incredibly knowledgeable, and I looked at him essentially for some kind of guidance. I spent a lot of time in Australia. It was a great place if you've not been. And while I was there, like I said, I met this man, and I said to him, we were talking, and I said, "What is the secret to wealth?" Right? And he looked at me, and he said, "Compound interest." And I said, "Compound interest?" He said, "Yeah, compound interest." He says, "If you understand that, your answer to the secret of wealth will be, hopefully you'll find the answer." And so I, obviously went away and did my own research, and I've come to understand the importance of compound interest, and I hope you do too. In fact, perhaps you already know about it. Just thought I'll mention it. So we talked about compound interest. Number 3. Number 4, the fourth cure, guard thy treasures from loss. So Arcad advises against taking a risk of loss and investing in get-rich-quick schemes. I'm going to make reference to the cryptocurrency market. In my humble opinion, there are a few projects that are viable and will stand the test of time. And I'm not going to name them because I don't want to be attacked. But there are a lot of other projects, a lot of other coins that are promoted heavily by YouTubers. And they appear to be get-rich-quick schemes, which in the crypto industry is known as the pump and dumps. So be wary of this as you enter it. And if you're an OG, you know what I'm talking about. If you're new, just be careful. There are some very fundamental projects, the Bitcoins, the Ethereums, the XRPs. Others of you listening will name out your coin when I say it. Yeah, this one, that one. Yeah, those two. Just do your own research, and look into projects that will stand the test of time. Look into projects that are being written about by the IMF, the International Monetary Fund, by the WEF, by the World Economic Forum, and so on and so forth. So it goes on to say, the fourth cure, guard thy treasures from loss. It is wise to be intrigued by larger earnings when thy principal may be lost. I say not. The penalty of risk is probable loss. Study carefully before parting with thy treasure, each assurance that it may be safely reclaimed. Be not misled by thy own romantic desire to make wealth rapidly. I hope that makes sense. This is a long-term, in my opinion, this is a long-term play. I'm looking at the crypto space For me, the short term is 2024, 2025. It's when the halving would happen for Bitcoin. And that's something we can discuss in later episodes. So we've discussed God. We talked about number 4. Number 5, the fifth cure: make of thy dwelling a profitable investment. Essentially, what it's talking about here is Arcad advises buying versus renting. And I know there are different viewpoints on buying versus renting, so I'll leave you to figure that out. But his recommendation is that every man, woman should own the roof that sheltereth him or her, and the ability of any well-intentioned man to own his, or woman to own his own home. So, Arcad talks about the importance of owning your own home. Number 6, the sixth cure: ensure a future income. So Arcad advises on having a pension and future retirement income. Therefore, do I say that behooves a man to make a preparation for a suitable income in thy days to come, when he is no longer young, and to make preparations for his family should he be no longer with them, to comfort and support them. So future earnings he's talking about through income through in your retirement. May that income could be through investments, could be through perhaps if you own property, an income from there, or your own private retirement plan. The seventh and the final cure that I'm going to talk about from Arcad's Richest Man in Babylon book, and hopefully this encourages you to, if you haven't come across it, to sincerely look into the importance of these. I wouldn't call them ancient, but this particular wisdom. The seventh cure: Arcad advises to keep developing your own skills to increase your investing wisdom, and also to increase your earnings power. The more of wisdom we know, the more we may earn. And that man or woman who seeks to learn more of his or her craft shall be richly rewarded. What does it mean? Essentially, to increase your ability to learn. I think I quote, and I'm going to steal a quote from Tony Robbins, who I've had the great pleasure of spending 3 or 4 days here in London when he came by. And I think one of the things that I apply in my own life, and the quote goes like, your earning is in direct relation to your learning. So, seek out mentors, learn as much as you can. This is a crypto podcast, so if you're getting into cryptos or you're thinking of getting into cryptos, learn all that you can. There's an acronym, DYOR, I made reference to in my earlier episode. Do your own research. Okay, good. I think I've hammered the point, and I hope that you're getting some value out of this. The next thing I want to talk about is probably, let's talk about it. The cryptocurrency market today, the 6th of June, Bitcoin is currently priced at 35,984, Ethereum 2,711, and XRP at 94 cents. If you'd like to follow me, I'm available, or rather you can reach me on Twitter, and my Twitter handle is @FergieRoger. Fergie is spelled Fergy, and Roger, Roger. So you can find me and follow me on Twitter @FergieRoger. And I think it's time to wrap up this video. And just to summarize what we've talked about the importance of knowing yourself. We've talked about emotional intelligence. We've talked about taking psychometric testing and understanding who you are. I've shared a reference or a link with you to Ray Dalio and the Principles YOU.com website. We talked about the richest man in Babylon and Arcad and his wisdom, and I encourage you to actually look into it a lot more. And I think it's a wonderful place to come to an end to this third episode entitled Know Thyself. And I hope you join me on further episodes. And once again, I'd be very grateful if you were to kindly subscribe if this is to your liking, this content. And of course, hit that like button. It helps with the YouTube algorithm. And last of all, to kindly turn on your notifications. So each time I make a video, you come to know of it immediately. So I'd like to end with this parting message and say thank you ever so much for joining me on this journey as together we learn more about the digital asset space. Yours truly, Roger Ferguson, the host of the Talk Crypto podcast, saying adios amigos. Until the next time, bye-bye.